Hello and welcome back to Code Harvest. Today we will be creating a simple web application called Bondify, and our objective for this app is to build features that enables users to interact with friends, families and loved ones online, encouraging meaningful connections. And so in order to achieve this, we will be using ZegoCloud. So let me tell you a little bit about ZegoCloud before we dive in. Now, ZegoCloud is an API that offers real-time communication solutions such as video calls, which allows developers such as yourself to improve user engagement, voice calls enabling crystal clear conversations, interactive live streaming allowing you to reach millions globally, chat services providing in-app messaging to boost interactivity, all while creating a friendly and comfortable experience for users. Now, ZegoCloud is also compatible with multiple platforms such as Apple, Android, the web, Flutter, React, Windows, and so on. And so the product that we're going to be using for this video is one of their special software development kits called UIKit, which allows us to implement our code easily and quickly, where the only thing that we have to do is add a few lines of code, and in less than 30 minutes our app will be ready. Now, in order to access ZegoCloud, scroll down and click the link in the video's description box or pinned comment down below. So if you register right now, you can get 10,000 free minutes of their special services and no credit card is required. So I suggest that you scroll down to the description box or the pinned comment down below right now so that you do not miss your chance. And so now let's start by creating an account. Alright, so now once you've already created an account in ZegoCloud, you should be taken to the dashboard page, and here you are able to create your first project. So the product that we're going to be using of ZegoCloud is the video call. We are creating a video call app, web application. So we're going to select this and continue. Now, we're going to be going with UIKit, but let's first get the project name, which for this case will be Bondify, and then we want a web application, so we're going to select web, and then we're going to use UIKit, which contains pre-built SDKs or software development kits. Alright, so now we are going to build our application, and because we're going to be selecting web since we're making a web application. And now, since this website we're planning to make is more for family and friends group calls, so we're going to select group call. We want the microphone to be on camera, and I believe everything selected is what we want the application to have. But I think we're going to select grid so that, friends and family can all see each other, and it's not just the person who's talking, but they can all see each other. And it kind of creates a stronger bond, I guess. So now we're going to save these settings, and now let's wait for the application to load. Alright, so now this is just a preview of how our web application, our video call application is going to look like. So right now my camera is blocked. However, if I wanted to turn it on or unblock it, I would select FaceTime HD. And our audio is working, so you can see that it's picking up my voice as I speak, and when I stop speaking, it should also stop moving. So now we're going to get the file, the pre-built SDK, and we're going to download the HTML file. Alright, so now we have our UIKit downloaded into the file where we have kept our application files, so our index page, style sheet, etc. So now, as you can see, we are at the index page. If we open our web UIKit has already been set or configured. It already has pre-built code. Alright, so to talk you through as to what each code does, for example, this function gets the URL, as it says URL, or the link parameters, and basically it gets the room ID as it is used to set the room ID number. So for example, the link will contain the room ID after the question mark, and that's why the split method is being used. So the room ID is set, or it is written after the link. And then here we get the room ID either from the function, or if it has not been set yet, then it will create a room ID instead. So it's basically, and then this code is basically OR. So if this is false, if there is no room ID in the parameter of the link, then that means it will create a new room ID. Now, how user ID is calculated is it first uses the random method in order to get a number that is at least under 10,000, and it does not only include integers but also floats, decimal numbers as well. And basically because a decimal number could be calculated, so then, or could be the result, so then math.floor basically ensures that the number is a whole number, so it rounds down that number to, you know, a whole number, and then it basically concatenates with a string, so then the number is, or the user ID is basically converted into a string instead. For username, it concatenates the username string plus the user ID, so it's going to be username, user ID. So for example, username 123 if the user ID is 123. Then for the app application ID, this should be secret and should not be known, and it's basically retrieved. You can retrieve it from here, and as well as the server secret. Now for the kit code, for the kit token, so basically this kit token is generated only for testing, so you cannot actually deploy an app using this method. You would have to generate a kit token with, and you can do this with the help of one of their documents, which I will share in the description down below as well. So this is just for testing, when you're testing integration with the video call app or the UIKit. So over here with the kit token, it creates a session, then it allows the user to, then it creates a link for us, a name link for us. Then it basically creates the meeting or the session settings, the links, the mode, and because we have selected group call, we have set it to a video conference. If we wanted one-to-one, then there's another attribute for that. So and then these are the settings where if you want the microphone to be turned on when joining. If you don't want that to be true, then we can set that to false, and maybe I guess we could set it to false since, you know, it could be a little bit noisy when, for example, the friends are gathered for a serious meeting. Then we probably want the microphones to be turned off, or maybe it's a study call, so we want the microphones to be turned off so that, you know, there's no distraction in the meeting. Then if we want the cameras to turn on when joining, I think that can be left true. Then if we want the camera to be turned on, so we set it to true, but we can set it to false. For example, when a user is not in a comfortable position to be you know, recorded, to be seen by others, then they might not know, they might forget to turn off their camera, so we can turn it off for them, and then when they are ready, they can turn it on when they're in the meeting. Then we have the camera toggle button. We want that to be true. We want these to have the option to turn on or turn off their camera, microphone as well, audio settings as well, sharing screen. We want the button. We want the users to be able to share their screen, to text, to see the user list, and then the max users is set to 50, so we can increase this value to, for example, 100 or maybe even 200, etc., but as long as it is greater than 1, so we'll just leave it at 50. Then for the layout, we've set it to grid so that everyone can see each other, since it's like a group chat, it's a family group chat, or a friend group chat, or maybe it's a business group chat. Yeah. Alright, so now that we have sorted our UIKit, we can now head on to designing our home page as well as our WebKits. So right now, as you might know from previous videos, we don't like to insert our style sheet in the HTML page. We want to set every styling in our CSS page instead. So I'm going to select this, delete this, and I'm going to set it in here instead. So there are a couple of things that we want on top of this element, however, and because we are going to be working with two pages, the index page, it currently has nothing. However, we have already set the language to English as we are writing this this application in English. We have also set the encoding format, which is UTF-8. So we're going to select this and we're going to paste this here. Another thing that we should do is to set our meta tag, and we basically want this to be, we want our page to be responsive, so we're going to paste this in our other HTML page as well. We want to also set the title as well as the style sheet. We want to include it in our page. So these two pages are going to be using the same style sheet page. So for this title, I think we can call it video call, but we're also going to be including the name of the application as well. And now we also have our style sheet. So for these two pages, we are going to create, since they're going to have different designs, but probably they're going to be using the same, the same tag elements, but not the same design. So for example, they're going to maybe have navigation elements, or they're going to be using the image tag. I'm going to be we're going to be inserting the Bondify logo in our web UIKit. So we are going to have to set the body, assign the body tags to an ID. So for this one, I'm going to assign an ID and we're going to call it meeting page. And then for the home page, I'm going to set it to, instead of meeting page, it's going to be called home page, probably without the hyphen. So any element that we want to select would have to use these IDs in order to select the specific, for example, navigation element. Both of them have the nav tag element. So this one is of the meeting page. So we're going to select the root element with the meeting page element. So now I'm going to be separating anything that is of the WebKit, that is part of the web UIKit. We're going to separate it with the homepage or index page with a comment. So we'll just call this web UIKit.html. And then we're going to create another one for index.html so that we are much more clear and we don't get confused as to which element is from where or from what. And now we want to first select an element or something that these two elements should have. These two pages should have. So we're going to use this asterisk tag in order to select all of the elements of a document, and basically we want all of the elements that the documents will have. We want them to have no margin, no spacing outside of any element. We don't want any spacing inside of any element, because basically the web browser might have set default margin spacing and padding spacing that each element should have. So we want to set both of these to 0, and then we also want the same font to be used for these two pages. So for now we'll set it to sans serif, but we're going to select a different font that we want to use, and we want to use a Google font since they're free. They're free and easy to use, and we want to use the Poppins font, as that is the font that we usually use, and it's pretty clean, it's nice, it gives users a soft vibe. It's not too sharp, it's nice, and it also looks kind of modern. So we're going to get the font, and we can just select it and keep it in the style sheet that both are going to be using. So now we can also set our font family to Poppins as well, and just in case the web browser does not support Poppins, since it is a font that is retrieved from an online website, then the user can see a sans serif font, and sans serif is also not too bad, which is why we selected this font. So now we are going to head over to the index page, as we're now going to be working on the index page. Alright, so now we're just going to remove this tab, as now we're going to be working on the home page, and we first want to work on the body of the home page. We want to set a specific color. And because these two pages are going to be using the body tag in order to set background color, and we want these two colors to be different, we're going to first set the background color to white, but we're going to have to select the ID, but we're also going to have to include the ID in which the body is, where the body is located, like which page the body is located, which should have a white background. So we're going to set the ID to the home page. So now only the home page will have a white background. So right now our index page does not have any elements inside, so let's first include a few elements, and let's first work on the navigation bar. And we want the navigation bar to be separated into 3 sections. So first let's set our website live so that we can see all the changes. Alright, so now we are going to create a new tab, and we're going to paste in our page. So right now it is completely blank. So now we want our navigation bar to contain basically three elements, or it should be separated into 3 parts. First part logo, second part the many links, so for example home, about, etc., services, and then a button, and we can just name this button call now as the meeting, and it will take the user to the meeting page. So now we're going to head over to our VS Code, and first of all we're going to have these 3 parts basically stored into div elements. So the first div, we are going to include the logo, and for this logo, when the user clicks on the logo, it should also take them back to the home page. It should be the logo should be clickable, and so we want to make it clickable with the anchor tag. And now with this anchor tag, we are going to include the image. And for this image, we want, just in case the image is not able to load for any reason whatsoever, for example, the browser has not been able to load the image on time, then we can basically let the user know that this is the image that is supposed to be displayed is a Bondify, and just in case the browser is able to load, it is at a position where it's able to load the image, then we want to select the Bondify file. Then we want to select the Bondify image. And so we have two types. We have the mixed colored, so it's blue and green colored, and there's also white colored, and that's for our Web UIKit page or meeting page. So we're going to select the mixed colored one. So we're going to include the source, basically where it is located in, and it is first located in the images folder. Then we're going to select the name of the file. So now when we check our page, we can see that the logo is set at the left corner, and that's where we want it to be, hence why it is the first element that we've created, but it is too large, so we're going to set the width and height. So for the width, we want it to be 160 pixels, but then for the height, it should be automatic to the width. So the width should be 160 pixels, but the height can be as high as it can, as long as the width is 160 pixels. So when we check, we can see that it's small and nice. And so now let's head over to our VS Code, and before we forget, let's include the hyperreference text, where when the image is clicked, then it should take the user just back to the home page, to the same page basically. Now let's create our second element, and this is going to include our menu links. So first let's create an unordered unordered list, and we're going to include the links, the list items itself. So each of these list items will also be links as well. So when the user clicks on either of these, in any of these links, it should take them to a certain page, but we are not creating those pages right now. However, if you do want me to make a video on creating the full application, the full web application where all of the pages are created, then do let me know in the comments down below. And so for now, we're just going to set each link to a hashtag. So we're also going to create a link, and let's just make our code much more clearer. So we're going to name the first one home, and then we're going to reference this to the index page. This is where the user should be taken to when they click on the home link. And then we want the second one to be about, so we're going to reference this to a hashtag character used, so since the about page has not been created yet, but it just takes the user to the same page. Third one, we'll call it services, and then fourth one, we will call it contact. And now let's head over to our third part of the navigation bar. And this will be where the button is kept, and basically we want this button to take the user to the meeting page. So we're going to create an anchor. We're going to use the anchor tag element in order to create this link, and then we're going to create a button inside this element, and we're going to set the text to call now. And we're going to create a class which we're going to be designing later on, and we're going to be using this class again in another element. We're going to be including another button, and it should basically have the same design as the button in the navigation bar. So hence we are going to call this button green blue button, as we want our button to be green mixed with blue. Then as for the reference, it should take the user to the Web UIKit page. So we're going to set that, and now we're done with the navigation bar. Alright, so now we're done with the navigation bar. So now we're going to create a div, and this div will basically be, this element will be a container that will hold all of the elements that we're going to be creating. So this home page right now, we're making a home page in which the main poster where the image and the text will be located, it's all going to be stored in this particular element. And basically we're not creating any elements underneath this page. Like, this is the only elements that we are creating, or the only container that we're creating for this home page. So again, if you want me to create the rest of the home page and the rest of the pages that a website usually contains, then do let me know in the comments down below. So we're only creating the container, the first container of the home page, which will contain the section that should attract the user and should lead the user to create a video call meeting. So now we're going to assign this div to an ID, and we're going to call this main poster container, assuming that we're going to be including other elements below later on, though not for this video. And now we're going to be creating a sort of wrapper which will define the positioning and basically the arrangement of all of the elements, so basically the image as well as the text. So right now we're going to assign this to a class before we continue, and we're going to call this main poster wrapper. So this container will be used to only hold all of the elements or contain all of the elements of the first section of the home page, and then the wrapper will set the designing, the positioning of the elements that are actually going to be inside, that we're going to be designing, and that the users will be able to see. So the first thing that we want the wrapper to contain is the image wrapper. So we're going to create a comment indicating that this is an image that we are creating. So we're going to create two divs, one for image and another for the text. So, and for each of these we're going to create a class. So class will be called item1. So then we will call or select these elements using its ID names. So we're going to create a simple class name called item1, and so the comment tells us to know what the element contains, which is an image. And then same thing for our for the second element, however, it will be called item2, and this will be basically the text. So now the only thing that this section will contain, or this class will contain, is an image. So we're going to create an alternative text. So just in case this image is not able to display, maybe it's the connection, internet connection, or the web browser just does not support such images, maybe the image is too large, etc. We can just send the user a message that the image that is supposed to be shown is basically friends call on video meeting. Something simple, or you can make it even more descriptive. And then for the source, we're going to select where it's basically located in, and it's going to be this file name right here. So it is in the images folder, and then we can select the image file name, and we'll just select the width and height in CSS. And then for item 2, it's going to contain 3 elements actually. It's going to contain the heading, the paragraph, and then the button as well. So we're going to head over back to VS Code. So first let's create the heading, and for the heading we will basically tell the user that this product provides instant connections and anytime, anywhere. However, we want these two to be separate, these two phrases to be separated. So instant connection should be on top, anytime, anywhere should be on the bottom. So we're going to include a break tag, so it breaks it into another line. So instant connection will be on first line, and anytime, anywhere will be in the second line. And we'll also add a comma here. Now another thing we also want to do is we want the anywhere text to be colored. We want it to be slightly different. So basically this text should be dark, should be basically black font color, and then should be a light color. So we're going to use a span element in order to design this and set it to a unique different color from the rest of the words in the sentence. Then we're going to create a paragraph text, and basically we can tell the user that, you know, in today's fast-paced world, Bondify makes it effortless to stay in touch with friends, family, and loved ones. Just a click away. Now in another paragraph we can continue with, we provide a warm and inviting space where you can strengthen your bonds seamlessly, all for free. And another paragraph, you can say, stay connected, stay close, you can count on us. So whatever spacing and new lines that we're adding here in text will not be applied in our document. So when we check, we can see that all the text is just in all together. So we're gonna head back to VS Code, and we're just gonna fix a few things where I'm going to connect these two together so that there's no spacing between the hyphen and the last word ones. We're going to create a line, and we're going to create a new line using the break tag, and then we're going to create another new line so that there is spacing between this sentence and the next sentence. then we can create another, we can add another break tag element at the end and another break element so that it can create spacing between this sentence and this sentence. So when we check our page, we can see that they're all separate and everything seems fine. So now we can continue. Now the last element the last child element that we're going to add for this class is going to be the anchor tag, and this will basically carry a button. So we're going to add a button, and this button will, when the user clicks on it, will lead them to the meeting page. So just like for the navigation bar, we're going to use the same reference as well, web UIKit, but we're going to use a different text. The button design will also be the same, only that the sizing will be different. So, and a few other things. So we're just going to assign a different text, start a meeting. Alright, so now we're done with the HTML aspect of our web page, of our home page. So now all of our HTML elements are already added into the document, into the web page. However, now we need to design the page so that it looks arranged and it has design. So we're going to head over to VS Code and into our styles page, and under the index section, in which we've included a comment to help us to separate all the elements for the index for the home page and the meeting page. After the body tag, we're going to first work on our navigation bar, and because this page might include a navigation bar and we might include other pages, for example, we might create the about page, services, contact, we are going to use the ID that we assigned the body tag to in our home page, which is called homepage simply. So we're going to use that ID, and because it is an ID, we select it with a hashtag, and then the element that we want to select from the home page, which is the navigation element, or the nav element. So first things first, we want the background of the navigation bar to be white, so we're going to set the background color to white. Another thing is we want the navigation bar to basically cover the full page, the full width of the web page. We want there to be some padding spacing, and only top and bottom, not left and right. It's not necessary for any left and right spacing, but we only want since the contents and the elements that are going to be inside the navigation bar are not too long, so we only want top and bottom spacing to be, so vertical spacing to be 18 pixels, but we don't want any horizontal spacing or left and right spacing, so we're going to set that to 0. And then another thing is we want to create a flexible layout for our navigation bar so that we can change the elements the way we want to. So first things first, we want the flex direction to be in a row. So now, previously it was in a column, so now we have it all in a row. And then another thing is we want these 3 elements to be spaced out evenly, and we want them to be spaced away because right now they're close together. So we're going to select the space around property or value. So now they're all spaced out evenly. Alright, so now the last thing that we're going to be working on is the box shadow. So this is optional, but we want to create a more modern look for our web page, and hence setting this to our navigation bar can help us with that goal. So the first value that we're going to work on, the first value that we're going to add determines basically whether the shadow leans towards the left or towards the right, so it's horizontal direction. The second value is vertical direction, how tall it is. If the higher the value, the more the shadow will be pushed down. The lower the value, the more it will be closer to the element. So the higher the value, the more further it moves away from the element. And then we're going to set the blurriness, like how blurry the shadow is going to be. So for example, right now it is sharp and it is solid. So, but we want the box shadow not to be very obvious. And right now it looks sort of animated. It looks 2D, but we want it to be 3D. We want to make the navigation bar to give it a 3D effect. So we're going to set it to a value of 15 pixels, and then we're going to set the color of the box shadow. So for example, so you can see now it's a little more blurry and it gives a better 3D effect, but now the color is too dark. So we're going to use RGBA, which as you can see here stands for red, green, blue, and alpha. And so basically we know how, if you set it at 0, it's going to be black, but the alpha value will determine how it's basically the opacity value. So it determines how light or how dark, how transparent and how transparent the box shadow will be. So if we set it at a high value, then at a high value of 1, then it will be fully transparent. But if we set it at 0, you'll see that the shadow will not be visible at all. but we want it to be slightly visible, so we're going to set it at 0.15. So that looks slightly better. However, we're going to reduce the value of the vertical direction of the shadow. It is leading too further away from the element, and it looks a little obvious. We don't want it to be obvious, the box shadow, but we want it to be subtle. So we're going to reduce it to 2 pixels actually. So now it's much more subtle. It still gives the box shadow, it still gives the navigation bar a 3D effect, sort of. And so now everything seems fine. So for example, this is the horizontal, determines the horizontal direction of the box shadow. So if it's a high value, then it will lean towards the right side. So you can see that it is slightly, there's no box shadow this side, but then if we make the value negative, then it will lean towards the left side instead. So when we move to the right, you can see that the box shadow is not visible here. And yeah, so we're going to set this back to 0. And then another thing is we want the box shadow to be a little more subtle than this, so we're going to create a little more lighter. So we're going to reduce the color, and we're going to set this to a value of 196. So now when we check our box shadow, we can see that it looks much more subtle, much more clean and clear and modern, and that's how we want our navigation bar to look like. Now the next thing that we're going to be working on is the elements, the div elements. Basically, we're going to set the arrangement basically. So we're going to, once again, this is in the home page, so we're going to select the ID that the body was assigned to in the home page, and then we want to select the divs of the navigation bar element. And just in case we wanted to add another div later on inside the so for example, these divs are the direct child element of the navigation bar, and then for example the anchor tag is the grandchild of the nav element, the image is the great grandchild of the nav element. Same thing here. Div is the child element, ul unordered list is the grandchild, li is the great grandchild, a is the great great grandchild. So it works kind of like a family hierarchy. So now what we want to do is, in case we want to use the div element inside the div element itself later on, and we only want to work on the child element of the navigation bar element. So we're going to use this greater than sign, where nav is shown to be greater than the div, and it basically selects the div element that is directly after the nav element, or the direct child of the nav element. So this ensures that only the divs that are the child elements of the navigation bar are selected, and not the great grand or the great great grandchild div, basically, in case we wanted to add a div later on in the future inside. So here we're going to first create a flexible layout so that we can change and sort the order the way we want to. So the only few things that we want to include is we want to basically centralize these elements towards the center vertically and horizontally. So for example, right now the logo and the button, we can see much more visibly that they're on top, but they should be centered vertically as well. So we're going to head back to VS Code, and we're going to use place items in order to center it vertically. And then we are also going to use justify content, and we're going to set the value to center so that it is also centered horizontally. So now we know that it is fully centered, these divs, these child elements of the navigation bar of the nav element. So now we're going to select the unordered list, because for right now the unordered list is, they are in a column, there are links, there's bullet points, so many things to change. So for example, we're going to select the home page, the unordered list that is in the home page, and for all unordered lists we want them to be we want to use a flexible layout so that we can make these changes and set the flex direction to be in a row. And then we also we don't want any bullet points. I don't think we're going to be using, even in the future when we are further developing the web page, we don't want any, we don't want the bullet points in any unordered list. So we are going to set the list style to none for all unordered lists that are present, and for the future unordered lists that we may add as we continue developing the web app. Now we are going to select the list items. So again, we're going to select the home page ID. So we're going to have to do this for all the elements in the home page. So now we're going to select all of the list items, the navigation bar element, and basically what we want to do is we want to set some spacing towards these elements, outside the element, not only horizontally, so vertically, top and bottom there should be no spacing, it's not necessary, so we're going to set that to 0, and then the second value determines the spacing added left and right. So for left and right we want the spacing to be 30 pixels. So now there is 30 pixels towards the left and towards the right side of each of these elements. Also, right now you may notice that the navigation bar is not fully touching the edge of the web page, and that's because of the enlarged image which we will set up later on. So once that's fixed, the navigation bar, the web page will be back to where the navigation bar is basically. So now we are going to work on the anchor tags for the links. So we're going to select all of the anchor tags that are in the navigation bar element that are in the list items, and basically we want the color. Right now it's purpley blue, so we want the color to be set to a dark color. So we're going to set it, instead of setting it to black, the black kind of gives a very strict layout. It basically makes it doesn't give the web page a soft look. So we're going to set it to a slightly lighter color that's still dark and may be confused to be black even. It's just a lighter version of black, which gives the web page a lighter look, as that's what we want our web page to look like. And then the font size, we're going to set it to 16 pixels. The font weight, we want to bolden it a little bit, so we set it to 500. And then we want to remove the text decoration. So this will remove the underline from the links. And then last thing is when we later on add the hovering effects, we want the color to change from dark to a lighter color. We want the transition to be smooth, so we're going to use this transition property, and we can also define the property that we want this transition to occur in, which is the color, the text color, so the color property. And then we can define how many seconds it should take, the transition should take, and basically slowing down the transition, the change in color will cause a smooth transition. So we can set it to 0.3 seconds, and then we want it in both ways: when the user hovers in, or their mouse starts hovering on the button, on the link, and when the hover exits, so out as well. And then you can now set the hovering properties, so what the link should look like when it's being hovered by the mouse. So the color should now change to a greenish color. So I found a good color combination of 2AF598. So now when we check our web page, and we forgot to add the hovering pseudo class. So when we check our page and we hover on our links, it looks pretty majestic. Because we added the transition property, and it slows down the change in color, and now it is pretty smooth. Alright, so now what we're going to be doing is we're going to set an active class on one of these. We're going to set an active class, and we're going to set a particular property or design for the current page that is being viewed. So for example, right now we're viewing the home page, so this will have an active class that we're going to add now. If it was the about page, then this would have the active class, and it would have certain property designs. So now we're going to head over to VS Code, and we're going to add an active class towards the home link. So we're going to add a class, well, not necessarily in the link, but we can add it in the list item. So we're going to add a class called active, and then we can specify what this active class should have that is part of the home page, part of the that is a list item in the navigation bar element. Alright, so now we're going to select the page in which the list item is in, the element, and the list item, the element itself, and the list item that has the active class. And for this specific active class, what it should have is a border bottom to indicate that this is the current page that we're currently viewing, and it just basically kind of makes the web page a little more informative. It makes it look less empty basically. So we're going to define the thickness of the line that we're going to add, And so the thicker, the higher the value, the thicker the line will be, basically height wise. And then we want it to be solid, we want it to be colored, completely colored and solid. There's different values such as dotted, where it's basically kind of like the line is chopped up into separate pieces, but we don't want it to be dotted, we want it to be solid instead, one straight line. So we're going to set the value to solid, and then the color should be the same color as the hover color that we use for the links. So now you can see that the home is being highlighted as the page that the user is currently viewing. And though the user might know, we might include similar design for the home page in any of these pages, and so it's really good to indicate what page that the user is currently viewing so that they can know which page they want to view next. And then next thing that we're going to add is we're going to define the color of the button. So right now the two buttons that we added, which both have the same class, which both have the green-blue button, the color is obviously gray, it's boring, so we're going to now design this, and once again we're going to select the page it is in, and then we are going to select the class itself, which is green-blue button. And then for this class we want it to have a unique background color, and this background color cannot be we're going to use a value in which cannot be used for background color, cannot be set for background color, but for only background, the background property. And we want to create a transition from green to blue, and so we want these two colors to be mixed together for this button, for the background color of the button. So we're going to use this property called linear gradient in order to help us to achieve that. And then inside the function, the first value that we should include is the direction of the transition, so whether it's to the top, to the bottom, to the left, or to the right, and we want it to the right. So green should transition to blue from left to right. If it was, so we're going to set that to right, but if it was to left, then it would be then that means blue would be at the left and green would be at the right if we added green first and then blue next. Green value obviously is not the default value of the document, but we want to set a specific color value, so it's going to be the same green shade that we're using for the web page, but the blue color is now we're going to introduce a new shade of blue, and this shade, which I think is really pretty, is 009 EFD. So now we can see that the color transition is much more light, and it kind of much more fits. Now right now the button is not looking how we want it to be, as we now have to fix the color, the text, as well as we want to remove the border, we want to add the padding space and all of that. So for these two buttons, we want it to have the same background color, we want it to have the same border radius, which defines the edge, the amount of roundness that the edge has basically, and the higher the value, the more round the corners of the buttons will be. Then we don't want the border that is outlined around the button, we want it to be removed, so we can set it to 0, and then the background, and then the color of the text should be white. So now when we check our button, it looks much better. However, we're going to include the sizing, spacing, font size, and all of that individually. We're going to select them separately. But another thing that we're going to add is the opacity value, which determines how transparent the button is. So if we set it to 0, then we will not see the button at all, and 0.5 then it will be half visible, translucent. But now we want it to be fully visible. But when the button is being hovered on, we want it to change to a lighter color. And the only possible way to change it to a lighter color is to change the opacity value, since we cannot change, we cannot use, for example, we cannot use the transition or the background property as a transition property, as a property of transition. So for example, if we add it there, it's going to be denied. So, and that's, I think that also makes sense in a way. So we're going to instead specify that it is opacity, the opacity value that needs to change, and we want this transition to once again to be of 0.3 seconds, both when the user hovers on the button and when the user's mouse exits the button. And so now we're going to select this button once again, and we're going to add the pseudo class hover. So when the green-blue button is being hovered on, we want the opacity value to be set to a value of 0.6. So it should be translucent translucent, but I mean it should be lighter. It should give a lighter color for the buttons, so we don't have to change the color, for example, and use linear gradient and then try and find a lighter color of this green shade of green and a lighter shade of blue of this shade. But we can just use the opacity value and it does the job for us. So when we hover on the bottom, you can see that the color changes and it's a pretty transition. Alright, so now we're going to sort out the navigation bar's green blue button specific properties that it should have. So we're going to select the page, the element, and the parent element, and then, or the main parent element, and then the button that we want to modify. And so we want to specify that the font size should be of 14 pixels. And then we want to specify the padding spacing, or the spacing inside the button, as right now the text and the button are too close, so we want there to be top and bottom and left and right spacing. So for top and bottom it should be 9 pixels, should be enough, but the button should be more wide than tall, so it should be the left and right spacing will be of 29 pixels. So that looks pretty nice and clear. And then another thing is we want it to be a little more bolder, as right now it feels a little too it felt a little too light. It felt a little light. And then now we're going to set the other button later on. So now we are going to be working on the next section. The nav element is done, so the next direct child element of the body, which is the main poster container. So we're going to select the page it is in, and then the main poster container name. So now we're going to define how the image and how the text is going to be laid out first. As the container just holds everything, we're going to set the order in the wrapper, but in the container we just want to know how much of space the container should take up of the web page. So we're going to set the value to 83% right now. The height should not be full, since the navigation bar already takes some of the spacing of the page, of the screen, basically the screen's viewport height. So instead of setting it at 100 viewport height, so the full viewport height of the screen, we're going to set it at 88 instead. Then we are going to set the padding spacing, but only left and right spacing. So we're going to set the top and bottom spacing to 0, but the spacing inside the container, left and right, should be 20 pixels each. So 20 pixels of spacing to the left, 20 pixels of spacing to the right. So we're going to see this effect soon once the image is fixed. Right now it's only being, basically it's all being thrown out to the right side, so we're going to fix the image very soon, as it's causing the excess spacing, incorrect spacing. So now we want to create a flexible layout so that we can now change the layout of our container, the elements of our container. So where it should be towards the top, like right below the navigation bar, or towards the left, towards the right, towards the bottom, or towards the center. We want it to be in the center, so we're going to use display flex to create a flexible layout so that we can achieve this. And once again, we want the flex direction to be in a row. We want the elements to be next to each other or on top of each other, and then we want there to be spacing. We want it to be centered vertically, we want it to be centered horizontally as well. And so now when we check our page, we can see that it is now centered. However, again, the image is causing incorrect spacing, incorrect positioning. So you can see that the text is now hidden towards the left side. So until we fix the image, we will see the results. And then the last thing, because we use the width property and the height property to set some of the positioning of the container, we're going to have to use margin auto in order to ensure that all of the elements inside this container are centered. Now the next thing is the wrapper. So it is the same name, however it's called wrapper instead. So for this wrapper, once again, we want to create a flexible layout so that we can now specify the spacing, the positioning of the image and the text, and the relationship that the text and the image should have. So we want it to be next to each other. We want these two child elements, item 1 and item 2, to be next to each other, and then we want it to take the full width of the container, and not of the page but the container. And then we want it to take up 520 pixels in height, and this also helps us in positioning and that should also be how tall the image should be, basically. And then we're going to specify the spacing between the image and the text. So for top and bottom spacing, we want it to be of 20 pixels, so slightly much further away from the navigation bar element, and then left and right spacing of 60 pixels. So now the image, the layout basically of the image and the text will not be further apart. It will be much more closer because of the large spacing that we're adding. And then since we have added the flexible layout, we also want to ensure that these two elements are vertically centered, and then we're going to use justify content property in order to ensure that there's spacing between the image and the text. Now we're going to work with item 1, which is the image. So I'm going to call the class, and now we want the image to take up 470 pixels of width. You can change it based on the sizing of your image, and then we are going to set the height to be 100% to make sure it takes up the full height of the wrapper, which is set at 520 pixels. And then the border radius we're going to set to 40 pixels, so we want the image to be round. And then we want to use overflow hidden, so that because this is the container of the image and not the image of the image itself that we are creating, that we are modifying. It's the container that is holding the image. So we want that container to be round, and then we want to hide the corners of the image because the image has corners. So we're not changing the corners of the image, but we're changing the corners of the container. And so using overflow hidden will hide the corners of the image and will make the image appear to have round corners, even though the corners are really just hidden. Then we are going to select the image itself, and we want it to take up the full width, the full height of the container, width and height of the container. We want to ensure that the image fits the container width and height sizing. And then we also want to include an animation where it kind of just swings from left to right. So we're going to add a swing animation. The first value defines what name you want the animation to be. It can be any name. It can be specific swings of image, anything that you want. So we're just going to make it simple, and we're just going to call it swings. And then we want it to take 5 seconds. Each take should take 5 seconds. And then we want it to be infinity, so it should create a loop. Now we're going to set the properties and basically what the animation is going to do, as that's just the name, but there's no animation just yet, as we need to create this animation now. So we're going to use this identifier called keyframes, then the name of the animation and the keyframes. So this will define and this will specify basically what the animation will do to that element that the animation was added in. So for the image, as that's the element that the animation has been added to, at first at 0%, so at the beginning of the animation, the image should be simply at 0 degrees. So we want to move it or swing it from the left to the right, or swing it from the left to the right using the rotate property, and we want it to be at 0 degrees first. Now this is optional, but I'm going to be using this transform property, which basically we can use to enlarge it, we can use to change the positioning of the elements. And what I want to do is I'm going to use the scale property, so I'm going to enlarge the image slightly to 1.1. And so obviously the higher the value, the bigger the image will be, or the more enlarged the image will be. And if it was a negative value, then it will be turned upside down. So now that's the beginning of the animation, but this line is optional. This is what is used to swing the animation, or to create a swinging movement or effect. So now at 25 seconds, so now the image should be rotated towards the left by 10 degrees. So positive value will cause the element to move towards the left, and negative value will move the element towards the right side. So when we check our image, we can see that it moves clockwise basically, and if it's a negative value, then anti-clockwise. So yeah, so I think that's fine. And then the next value is 50%, and so now at halfway of the image should go back to 0 degrees, so that it doesn't change from 10 degrees to negative 10 degrees straight off. We want to slow down the transition. We wanted to create a smooth animation, and so decreasing the amount of change that occurs within given time will create a smoother transition. And then at 75%, so now we're almost done with the animation, then the animation should turn towards the right side or anti-clockwise by 10 degrees, and then at 100% the image should turn back to 0 degrees. And this creates the sense of a loop. So the first value that we added at 0% at the beginning should be the same value at the end, in order to create a smooth transition, but also a loop. Because if it was a different value, if it was set at 10 degrees, then it would when the animation would end, then it would abruptly start again at 0 degrees. So we want to make sure that the value are both the same, and that seems fair. So now when we check our animation, we can see it turns clockwise, anti-clockwise, clockwise, anti-clockwise. But now another thing is there was an abrupt change of the size of the image. So another thing that we're going to do is we're going to add the same value in the end as well, because if it was not added at the end, then that means the scale factor would reduce back to 0, and hence why the abrupt change, so it doesn't create a loop. So now when we upload our page, we can see that the image stays the same, as at the same size, and it creates a loop, and there's no change in the sizing of the image, and there's no abrupt change from big to small. So now we're going to continue with item 2. So now we're going to select it using the same selection that we used for item 1, but now we're just going to change the value to item 2 instead. And so we want to set a specific width that the text should be, and I found that 470 pixels in my case seemed perfect, seemed much more suitable considering the screen that I'm using. Then we are going to create a flexible layout for our text, and the way we want our text to be is the heading should be on top, then after that, below that, the paragraph, and then below that, the button. So we're going to use a flexible layout just to ensure that these elements are centered, but we want the flex direction this time to be we want the elements to be on top of each other, so we're going to use the column value instead to ensure that it stays as a column. And then we are going to use justify content in order to ensure that the text is horizontally centered, vertically centered actually, because right now you can see the image starts from here to here, but if we remove the center property, you can see that it just moves back to the top. So it completely centralizes the text, and then the color that should be used for all text that is in this container should be the same color that we use for the navigation links text, which is 5050. Now before we continue, I noticed that there is no background color for our image, so we're going to head over to item 1, which is the container of our image. And basically it's just going to have the same background linear gradient from green to blue, right transition. So we're going to just paste it here. So now when you check our page, it looks much more like the web page that we want to see. And now we just need to work on the text, on the paragraphs, in order to create that vision fully. So now we are going to work on the first element, which is heading 1, and so we're going to select that. And so first we want to specify the font size, which should be about 42 pixels. The font weight should be a little bold since it is a heading, so we're going to set it to 600, and then the line height we're going to set to 57 pixels. And the line height basically defines how the amount of spacing between all the text that is basically in the element. So for heading 1, it defines the spacing between this text and this line of text and this line of text. So it kind of defines the spacing between the first line and the next line that is in this element. So obviously the higher the value, then the more space is created. So say we set it to 100 pixels, then there's more spacing between the first line and the second line. So now we're going to set it back to 57 pixels. I like how that fitted better. And then we're going to increase the spacing between the heading 1 and the paragraph below it. So we're going to add a margin only bottom spacing. So we're going to specify with margin bottom with a spacing of 30 pixels. And now we're going to work on the span element that is inside the heading, inside heading 1, which is anywhere. And we want to basically make it a little lighter. And it basically just highlights and probably just emphasizes that the meetings can happen anywhere, globally, whatever country, wherever you are, obviously as long as the user has internet. So we're going to highlight it and basically create a lighter color for the span element. So once again, we're going to select the container that it is in, and then the name of the element. And so we want to specify that the color should be the same color that we have added for the active nav link, and we want it to be green basically. So we use this same shade color before, which is 2AF. So now when we check, it also looks less empty, as without it just felt a little empty. It felt like you needed something more, and a little touch in order to excite the user. Now we're going to work on the paragraph, the text that is in the paragraph text and paragraph element. So only a few things that we're going to add, which is the font size, which we're going to set to 15 pixels. The font weight, we don't want it to be too thick like the heading, so we're going to set it at 600. And then another thing is we want to specify the line height, so the spacing between each line, each new line, and we're going to set that at 25 pixels. And another thing is we want there to be a good amount of spacing between the text and the button. And oops, I meant to put 400 boldness. And so now we're going to add the margin bottom spacing so that it can create spacing between the paragraph text and the button, and we're going to set it to 50 pixels. So now when we check our page, it looks much more like the vision and the page that we want it to look like. So now the last thing we're going to work on is the button sizing and spacing. So we're going to select the container that it is in, or the parent element that it is in, and we're going to select the element that we want to modify, which is a green blue button. And right now we want to first specify the font size, set it to 15 pixels as it looks a little small, tiny. Then the font weight should be thicker, so we're going to set it at 600. The padding spacing, we'll set it to 30 pixels, so 13 towards the top and the bottom each, and then left and right spacing of 30 pixels, so it should be wider, just like the button that is on top, but just a little wider than the top button. Then we want the width of the button to, if you think this is fine, that's the end of the design of the home web page, of the home page. But for me personally, I think that if we increase, or if we basically stretch the button to fit the full width of the item 2 container, then I think that would be a little better. So we're going to set the width of the buttons property to 100%. So now it covers the full width of the item 2 container. So now we are done with the design of the home page, and now we can see that our button kind of looks like how we want it to look like. And also when we click on start a meeting, it takes us to the meeting page. And so now we can see that our meeting page looks, it has basically important properties, which is the meeting itself, and we can start to join a meeting. We can turn on our microphone, we can turn on our camera as well, so we can also share screen, and so on. We can view the personal link, which we can copy and we can share it to the users that we want to share it to. And we can also see the number of room members that have attended the meeting. We can also create chats, we can send messages. So but viewing the layout of the meeting page is not good. And also, if we want to go back to the home page, we can't go. There's no link. The background is too blank. So we're going to add some sparkle. So now what we want to do is we want to first add a background. But before we add a background color, we first want to add a logo, as that is the one other property that we want to include. So right now the root, which I believe contains the this meeting box, is where it is contained, but we also want to add a logo, and a logo in which it is basically a link in which the user can click on, where it takes the user back to the home page in case they want to go back to the home page, so that they don't have to click on the previous button. It is much better for the user to just click on the link and back to the home page directly. So, and this should be above the meeting box, so we're going to set it above the root element. And so first we're just going to create a div, and so we're going to set a class for this logo where we're going to keep the link and the image. So we want to call this class Bondify logo, and just in case we want to use it again, we can use it again. We can use the same class again for other elements in this page, in this file. So we're just going to keep it as a class instead of an ID. And now we want the image to be clickable, so we're going to use an anchor tag so that we can create that link. We're going to reference it, assign the reference to index.html, which is where the home page is, and then now we can include the image tag element. And so just in case the image cannot be loaded for any reason, then maybe internet latency, internet connection errors, for whatever reason, then they should be able to note that it is a Bondify logo. It is the Bondify logo that is supposed to be viewed. And we can also let them know that it is a link. So just in case, they will still be able to click on the link and it will still take them to the home page, only that the image will not be shown. So we can test this where we can just click and we are taken back to the home page. So only that the image is not visible. So now we're going to add the file path in which it is in, which is the images folder, and this time we're going to change the color of the background color of the meeting page. It's not going to be white like the home page, but it's going to be, because the box is already white, so it doesn't need to be white unless we're changing the background color of the meeting box, which I don't think that would be preferred. I think the background color should change color. So we are going to we want it to be a colorful background color, so that then the logo will have to be will not be the same mixed color that we used for the home page, but it will be a white logo instead. Then we're going to set the width and height properties. And so now we're done with the HTML side of the meeting page, so now we can work on this designing of the meeting page. Now we want to select the body first, and we want to set the background color. In order to do that, we're going to since we have assigned the ID to, or it's part of the body tag, so that's why we're selecting the body first, and then which body is it for the whatever we apply, should it be applied for the home page? No, it should only for the body that has the meeting page ID name. And then inside we want to set the background color to the linear gradient that we have added for the buttons in our home page. So it should go to the right, and it should be the pale green shade that we added, which was 2AF, and then the blue shade that we added, which was 009 EFD. So now when we check, it makes the meeting page much more lively. So now we can set the width and the height properties of the body, and we just want to ensure that the body's width and height is 100% of the viewport width and the viewport height. So the viewport width and the viewport height is basically the current screen frame. You could say this current screen frame that the user is viewing. So this is a particular one frame, for example, and if we scroll slightly, this is another frame, this is another frame, and we keep scrolling, we get different frames, so just like in a video. So we want to ensure that this is only set to 100%, basically the full width, viewport width and height. So we're going to set it at this is viewport width and height is 100%, 100 viewport height. So now we can add position fix to ensure that the page is not scrollable. This is not necessary, so but we just want to ensure that the page cannot be scrolled, it cannot scroll down or up, so the images are much more, the elements are much more closer together. Now we're going to work on the logo itself, the container first. So we want to select the page in which this logo is in, And for this logo, we want the position to be fixed towards the top of the page. So we're going to use position fixed to ensure this, and then we also want it to take up the full width of the page. And basically, we want to ensure that the image is towards the center of the page, but only at the top. Then we're going to add a little padding spacing, but only towards the top side of the padding of the space of only towards the top of the element. So we're going to set it to 20 pixels as it is too close to the edge of the top edge of the web page. And now we can add the height of our container so that our image can contain 100% width and height of that container width and height that we're going to specify. So width is 100%, but height should be about 45 pixels. And then we want to ensure that the image is always in front. Even when we join the meeting, it should. Well, when we're in the meeting, it should be hidden. So where the right the position is perfect. But when we end the meeting, we should be able to see the logo. So setting the Z index of the logo to be higher than the Z index of the element behind it. So for example, if we rejoin instead, and if we set it at a higher value of 2, for example, we can see that it is now in front of this element as well. But we don't want it to be in front of that element as well, so we're going to set it at 1. So now we're going to define the image width and height, and then the width and height, I believe that we have not included the image source file path yet properly, so we're going to fix that. But first, let's include the image properties. So the width is 100%, the height is 100% as well of the container or of the parent element, and then we also want to ensure that the image fully is contained inside the Bondify logo, inside its parent element basically. And also setting the logo to position fixed will ensure that the logo is now taken out of the document flow, so it's kind of in a way considered not a logo, not an element, though it will still appear in the document. It's just now considered not a logo, so it will not take up the space that an element would usually take. For example, if we removed position fixed, it would cause the meeting box to be pulled down lower, and that doesn't look pretty, so we're going to put position fixed back, and now it kind of fits, and the spacing of this meeting page is not interrupted. It is towards the center, which we want it to be. We want it to be towards the center. We don't want it to be interrupted by the spacing that the logo could take. So now we want to ensure that the anchor tag, the link which holds the image, basically we want to ensure that the logo is centered vertically, horizontally. So we're going to select the elements that it is in, the name of the parent element, and the element that we want to select itself, and then we want to create a flexible layout to ensure that the item inside the anchor tag, the image basically, is centered vertically, horizontally, and that it takes up the full width and the full height of the Bondify logo width and height. So now when we check our HTML page, let's see if we included our image properly. Images, Bondify logo white, PNG, and that's exactly okay. So now it has loaded, and so now when we click on the logo, it should take us to the home page seamlessly. And if we click on call now or the start a meeting link, it should take us to the meeting page, and then we can now change the name to, for example, Code Harvest. Alright, so now we can turn on our camera, our microphone, and you can see a little icon here that shows that this, like, I am currently speaking, and the louder the voice, the higher the icon goes, and if it is a low voice or if you're quiet, then it stays down. Can also turn our cameras on. However, mine is blocked at the moment, but I could change it to FaceTime so that you could view my camera. And now I can show you a pad of sticky notes with several colors. We could move it very fast from left to right, or we could move it really slowly, so it has a good video quality as well. We could share our screen as well, where users will be able to see the video call meeting page, but I believe that could create a mirroring effect. So we're gonna choose an application available, so we can go with the VS Code application in which we've been writing our code in. So now users will be able to see the code. They won't have control over my screen, they will only be able to view my screen. And now we can go back. We can also copy the link of the meeting, the meeting link, and we can share it with users who we want to join the meeting. We can view the number at the room members and see whether the microphone is turned on or off, and that video as well. And then we can also send a message. Maybe if everyone is studying, if it's a study group, then we can say, hello, how is everyone studies going? And it also shows the time sent and the name of the person who sent the message. So now we can also exit, confirm, rejoin, and also one more thing, we can also change the layout where we can set it to automatic based on I believe it's based on the number of members. If it's a lot, it would probably switch to grid. If it's few, it would switch to sidebar, or we could manually set it to sidebar, but we're going to keep it at grid. And so now we can completely leave. We can see the link and the image link, in which if we click on it, it will send us to the home page. And so we can either return to home screen, where we'll be able to view the meeting page, default page. We can go back to home. So now we are completely done with the web application. Thank you for watching this video. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and comment down below. Subscribe to Code Harvest if you haven't already, and see you in the next video. Goodbye!